Namaskar, kindred spirits. So welcome everybody. And it's a beautiful day here. And it's a beautiful day to host our new guest today, a beautiful young woman, Kiran. She's a lovely person who has a lot of knowledge of yoga and horses, and also in the world of healing arts, where she's made that her study, her profession, and her personal practice. Kiran is an acupuncturist, a herbalist, an osteopath, and she practices in San Diego in California. She believes that community is very important for our well-being, and I'd really like to touch more on that, about community and how it helps us in our lives, especially with what everyone's going through these days. She volunteers and helps in many ways in her communities, where she shares her knowledge and her healing background and techniques to help others, and how she feels we can make a difference for ourselves and our communities through our knowledge, or maybe our experience of yoga or horses or whatever we have in our life as tools. Kiran is also the daughter of my very good friend Corinne, who was our guest on the first podcast and who I began the Yoga with Horses with together. She, like my daughters, grew up in Costa Rica, which is also one of her many homes. And so today we're going to listen to Kiran's story and some of her life's experiences, as well as touching on topics of how you can help heal yourself in a world where we can often feel disorientated, disconnected, and just feeling a little bit insecure with what everything is going on in many different ways throughout the world. Namaskar, Kiran. Welcome.
Thank you. And thank you for that beautiful introduction. I'm really excited to be here. I have one small edit to make to the introduction. I'm not an osteopath, but I do practice osteopathic techniques.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that. I'm speaking to the listeners and you from San Diego, California. We're having a beautiful day despite all the fires, making the skies pretty hazy, which has made the sun really surreal looking. But yeah, really happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I was going to actually touch on that in San Diego and the fires and how they're maybe affecting, obviously the air you're breathing for humans, and of course for the animals that are around as well, and how it's maybe affecting also that our life force energy, prana, through what we're breathing as well. And what is that having as effects on you over there?
Oh, that's huge. I can't say that I'm experiencing the air quality negatively. I think I just have respiratory health that isn't susceptible or vulnerable to it. But, you check the weather app and it says poor quality or for vulnerable people. But it's interesting to think about the life force on a planetary level, what with everything going on between COVID and, the many sort of uprisings and revolutions that we see happening worldwide. But speaking for the United States, Black Lives Matter, having that happen in conjunction with COVID is just so interesting. And then having the climate conditions really getting accentuated too. I mean, yeah, the fires this year in California, they're records. And to know that every year has the potential to get exacerbated and be worse. It's a really wild time to be human. And I, like you mentioned, other animals too, they're bound to be feeling these shifts, right? On a different conscious level.
Yes, well, animals being very sensitive, they're more aware of it than us. But as humans, whether we're aware or unaware of these subtle energies and the air that we live in, etc., it's still affecting us. I mean, there's vibrations of whatever, it's the global warming, how it's affecting the climate, the hurricanes on the other side, the fires by you. I mean, it's all California going all the way up to Seattle. It's
Oregon, yeah.
In Oregon, it's quite something. And all that smoke's going into the air, infecting it. So on a very sort of earth way, physical way, it's affecting us. But also the vibrations, like you say, with COVID and also Black Lives Matter. There's a lot of energy, which in some ways is negative. There's a lot of this vibration going on, and it's affecting everyone in every different ways. And I'd like to sort of further talk a little bit about this as we go through our conversations. But I'd like to go back to the beginnings a little bit with you. You grew up in Costa Rica with your siblings and your mom and dad. And you've come from a very interesting background, a very mixed background of your mother, who was born in the States and who's American. Her father is from the Philippines. Her mother is from Germany. Your father's from India, so you have grandparents that are Indian as well. You visit these countries, you live these countries, you know your family well, and you grew up also in a Latin American country with its own very typical culture and very different from other cultures too. So how was that like for you growing up with all that big bag of goodies?
And while we're at it, we might as well say Happy Independence Day, right? It's Costa Rica's Independence Day.
Oh, good heavens, yeah.
September 15th.
Strange not hearing the bands play.
Yeah, I actually put it on my iPhone this morning. I put the national anthem on for old time's sake.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a very mixed background. I turned 30 this year in April. And I have to say that a large part of my journey has been reconciling my journey with what home is and around the concept of belonging. So for a long time, I didn't so much have like a recognition of how ethnically and culturally mixed my family is. It's more just like, we're the Aulaks. And it was almost like, as I reflect on it now in hindsight, it's like we were a tribe, a very, very small tribe. And I'm very grateful for the bonds it created. And it's just so interesting to think about how, like, for example, English was the meeting language in the family, right? Like, we could have all been speaking Spanish, but my parents aren't Costa Rican. We could have all been speaking Hindi or Punjabi, but my mother doesn't speak those languages. And, she doesn't have a fluent grasp on Tagalog or German. So, like, for my parents to raise us, it was English was the language. And it's so funny it's something I walk through the world with. I could look like pretty much any of the nationalities that I am. I think I could pass in any of those countries, right? And a couple more.
And a couple more, for sure.
Yeah. But it's this thing where in Costa Rica, I'm not Costa Rican enough to be Costa Rican. In the United States, I don't feel American enough to call myself American. Same goes for India, the Philippines, Germany. And so while that has created for me at times some like angst, I've really made peace with it in this way that I'm really grateful for. My roommate and I had this conversation this morning about, and I'll just do a little synopsis, but basically like the things that give you anxiety, how you can actually take power from them. Mm-hmm. And pivot them. If they have so much power over you, can't you derive power from them as well? And so this belonging and home thing that used to kind of haunt me a little bit, I love that I have so many homes, and I love that it feels really beautiful to be such a global citizen. And I do think that more and more people are going to be third and fourth and fifth culture like me, and for me to know that having been raised abroad, I would love to give that to my family if I ever have children. Mm-hmm. I love what it did for my perspective, my global perspective. I love, one of my roommates right now is really into charcuterie boards, and we were eating prosciutto together. And I was reminded that my best friends in high school were from Vienna, and they were half Portuguese, half Dutch. And we would eat prosciutto and goat cheese on baguettes all the time. And like, that's not a very Costa Rican thing to do. And then the other, my other peers, like Country Day School in Costa Rica was so international. And while it was difficult to be the person who stayed while embassy kids came and went in like 2-year stints, it was really cool now to remove my emotions and the nostalgia and just recognize how much exposure I had to global culture.
Yeah, I think that I more and more, I mean, not everywhere and for sure not enough, but I do think it does make a big change, a big influence on opening up our view and how we see things coming from such a multicolor background. It helps us have a bigger understanding and compassion for other people and their traditions and the way they live. And that's something that humans really need to learn about, having acceptance for others, who they are, no matter how strange or unusual, or maybe they think evil or bad their beliefs are. But they have to understand those people are just like them, looking for exactly the same things, for love, for security, for wellness, for their family. And when we come from like, I have 6 different nationalities in my background and growing up the way I did too. I never really had a home. Costa Rica's been my first home, but I'm obviously not Costa Rican. I don't have that Latin background, and I don't look Costa Rican, even if for me, if it's my home. So I think it's very interesting, and it helps us with our perception on life. So I know as a little girl, you fell in love with horses, and you took your mom on a bit of a journey there too. So let's just give a little short description of your connection with horses and what it meant to you to start riding in Costa Rica and how that felt in the riding club. And then I know you competed a bit. And then afterwards, you kind of shifted the way you wanted to be with horses.
Yeah. It's so funny. Since before I can remember, I guess I was asking my parents for horseback riding lessons. I don't know where the affinity came from. I actually had a realization a couple nights ago that I'll share soon. But when I was 8, the begging finally paid off and the nagging, and my mom signed me up for lessons and decided to take them with me. So that, already having been the youngest, me and my mom, I was pretty, we were just really close. We spent a lot of time together. And this just was the start of even a deeper bond that my mom and I share. So yeah, we started riding together. I remember the first class was, it was a Tuesday, and the teacher said, well, it's Tuesday, so that's Bareback Day. And I had never been on a horse in my life, but too bad, it's Bareback Day, so you're getting on without a saddle. So I did, and promptly fell off, just kind of slid off of that sheen, hair of theirs, that coat. But yeah, I mean, that just kind of colors what that club was like. We would do things like, stand on the horses' backs and go around the track, or we'd ride them backwards as we went over jumps. It was just all very silly and fun. And the friendships that I made through horseback riding, the girlfriends, that we were just quirky and weird, and I loved it. It started in me this trend that was already set in stone by being part of the Aulakh clan, of just being myself and being a weirdo, and that being okay. And I developed really, really strong bonds with horses. It was this beautiful introduction to love, capital L love. I am of the love school. I'm of the love religion. I think it's the force behind the cosmos. I think it brings everything into being. I think that if we can get our hearts to vibrate at the same vibration of love, I think maybe that's the Tao. I think that's universal chi. I think that's the supreme prana. So anyways, horses really like.
I'd just like to interrupt you something, because you said 2 points that I just want to go a little bit, not further, but just add something to. You talked about that first riding lesson being bareback, and all the fun and the quirkiness and all the different ways of doing things. And for me personally, I find that is the best way. When I'm teaching people how to ride, everyone, we begin bareback. The saddle comes after, because once you have that balance to ride bareback, the saddle is easy. It's nothing. But you have that balance. You forget you're not depending upon that saddle or stirrups or everything else. You're creating that own sense of gravity in your core and your strength in your core. So I think that's great that you learned that way, because I really believe that is so important. And also, you talked about love, about heart, about the energy of the heart and that vibration of the heart. And you see that's an interesting factor about the heart math with the horse. And the horse's heart rhythm being very rhythmic, and how that is very healing for humans, because we have the arrhythmic. Our heart goes boom, boom, and there goes boom. And when we're around horses, it's that vibrational energy that brings us so much peace and love. So we're picking up that, even though we don't know what it's about, our vibration is becoming in tune to their frequency, and it affects us very strongly. So yes, all about the love, absolutely. Okay.
Yeah, I love that you bring up that bareback point, because now, fast forward into my journey as a body worker, I couldn't be doing anything other than what I'm doing. I tell people that my hands, it feels like they were made to feel chi. And as I reflect on it, I think I learned that with horses, that sensitivity. And it seems like bareback riding puts you in camaraderie with the horse, and saddle, I think, more easily can put you into domination over the horse.
Yes, absolutely. Well said. Yes.
Yeah. So back to the horseback riding journey. I was all in. It was all I did. My room was all horses and ribbons. I was in the competitive circuit, and I loved it. I went through many loves, horses, that is, and then got to, I guess, what you could call like the pinnacle of my competitive career, and competed in Germany and in dressage. And it was the coolest experience up to date for my 14-year-old self. But I was training at 6 a.m. before school and then at 3:30 after school. And I was burnt out when I got back from Germany, took some time off and never went back in the same way. And it was something that I held some regret about, but I trust the way things work out. And now my mom keeps a couple horses and I love going to hang out with them. And I hope and feel in my heart that I will have horses again in my life and have that bond again. But the little pivot that I had was that I have no idea what drew me to horses, but I know that it drew my mom to horses. And not to share too much of her story because it's hers to share, but she deals with some chronic pain, and I can see now, like the thread weaving through, that her greatest doctor and medicine has been horses.
Yes.
And so while I'm not sure what my bond is with horses these days, I am grateful that whatever affinity, 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 8-year-old Kiran had brought my mom to horses.
Our daughters, I know very well from ourselves, have wonderful influences or pivoting points in our life. And actually, my daughter Lexi, she was one of the points that it was through her. She's not interested at all in the healing world and subtle energies, and she had a tendency to roll her eyes as a teenager. But it was through her, when she heard about something, she said, "Oh, Mom, this is for you. You have to go." And that really started my energy healing and going deeper into that world, becoming who I am. So yeah, she had an effect on me as well. And now vice versa, the horses, who she's always loved horses, but she didn't have that passion for riding or anything like you did or I did. She just loved them as being beautiful and there. But now she's connected so strongly with them, and they've helped heal her in so many beautiful ways too. So I see it happening all the time. And yes, I'm sure there was a reason why you were attracted to horses amongst the many ones, and maybe one was to help your mother, for sure. I believe that. And then another thing I think you kind of influenced your mom too was the world of yoga.
Yeah.
But tell me, actually, I don't really know that. I know the story from your mom, and she did talk about it here on the first podcast. But let's hear your story about that.
My side of it.
Yeah.
Well, I know that she had experienced and heard of yoga, before I was born. But I got to be the age 14, and one day was chewing gum and developed a click in my jaw. And that click to this day is still with me. So that's a TMJ joint. And it wreaked havoc on my life as an adolescent, actually, because when the fascia in one part of your body gets adhesed and starts sticking, everybody else is going to come with it. So I ended up having quite a bit of pain as a teenager. And my family didn't have a lot of exposure to alternative healthcare or different types of medicine. So I didn't get a lot of relief for a long time. And then when I was in my freshman year of college, I just decided to enroll in a yoga elective. And it was this really cool activity where it made me feel so much better. There were days where I didn't want to get out of bed, that I didn't like everything ached so much. And there was this quality, especially as like the way I remember it. I don't have thoughts in remembering it. I just remember like the stillness and the silence and the discipline of the practice. I was someone who did yoga and didn't doubt it. I just kept showing up. I remember doing it on my patio at home as a freshman in college while everybody else is, doing what college kids do. I was doing yoga. And so I was 18 at that point, and I think, I came home during a vacation in college and just said to my mom, hey, I think these poses might help with some of the symptoms you experience. And she took it and ran. By the end of that year, she was doing yoga daily. I think it was like the Bikram sequence. And I mean, you've witnessed it since. And now she has this yoga. She's I'm not going to say she's a different woman than who raised me, but she is such a beautiful evolution of that woman.
Your mother is a force of nature. And like you said so well, she takes something and she runs with it. You know, she puts all her focus, her energy, her passion into it. It's amazing. I'll say sometimes one thing and the next thing I know, like, wow, you did that. That's incredible.
Oh, you did it.
How? You know, she just inspires and I love your mother very much, as you know.
Yeah. I sometimes, to know her is to love her.
Mm-hmm.
And so at this point, I did some trainings with her, got my 200 hours and then some, taught for a little bit when I spent a year living in Hawaii on permaculture farms after college. Found out that I don't like to be in the spotlight like that as the teacher. But yoga was my gateway drug entirely to massage therapy, which was my gateway to acupuncture. Now acupuncture it's mostly what informs my life and my worldview. But I also know that as a 30-year-old, more and more things are going to come to my path. And I just know acupuncture really is the strong foundation for it. But just, somatic, anything somatic, I have a tendency to gravitate towards.
Great. And before you started, because I know being an acupuncturist, it's been many years you've been studying it. It's quite long, and you went down many different courses, and the schools you went to were very deep and very, let's say, heavy, right? You did a lot of studying. And before that, you were kind of traveling a little bit. I remember your mom telling me, oh, she's over there now. Oh, she's in South America now. Oh, she's on a boat. Oh, she's over here. As if you were just sort of sailing around in the air looking for where you needed to go. Tell us a little bit about your travels.
Well, I've had the good fortune and the privilege to be able to follow my heart. That's something that I have so much gratitude to my circumstances and my dad and everyone that I haven't had to. We've all had struggles in our life, right? But struggles didn't keep me from pursuing my passion and my heart and my dreams. And my gratitude will never run dry for that. But you know what? Some twists and turns after college, living in Hawaii for a little bit and just being kind of in a yoga, farming, permaculture kind of like lens towards life as a 22-year-old. Those are formative times for like who you're going to be as an adult. And so that was coloring it. And then actually the death of a close friend also really colored my approach. You know, when life and death, those concepts make you really think about what it is you're doing here. Let's see, what were my travels? I spent
You were in South America or something for a while.
Well, okay. So when I was in college, I did study abroad in South America, and that was a really cool experience. Chile and Argentina, just so good to be a part of different cultures and see their natural landscapes and their, urban landscapes. I had a really, not a very long trip, like a 10-day trip to Chiapas in Mexico with a really close girlfriend. That was really good. I think maybe the big one though was knowing that acupuncture school was going to be 4 years of like busting my butt. I decided to go to New Zealand for, I think it was 4 months.
Yeah, that's right. You went there. I forget that. Yes.
Yeah. And that was the coolest. If I get the opportunity to live in New Zealand again, I'll feel really blessed. I'll feel really lucky. Beautiful place. It's like this developed country that still has the flavor of, like a non-modern country. Like people will just flip U-turns anywhere on the road or, and they just
Wild West a little bit
still. Yeah. And it's just beautiful. And my mom came out for a little bit of that too. So it was fun to share with her. But yeah, I mean, through all the kind of floating around that I did, which you're absolutely right. It was this, what I mean when I say that I'm lucky to have been able to follow my heart. It's that I was kind of like marinating while the circumstances all got ready for me, it seems like, and yeah, I worked on a boat for a little bit in Santa Barbara, which was a really cool experience, learning to sail, getting paid to learn to sail. And getting to live in Santa Barbara and explore Ojai and all that. It was all just very, it always puts me in contact with the elements, and the elements are important to me, but yeah.
So then what was the pivot point, or what drew you to acupuncture?
This is a tough question for me when I'm speaking heart to heart to someone. For other people, I've like learned my little spiel. Oh, like the jaw pain led me to yoga, led me to massage, led me to acupuncture. But in truth, I feel like my entire life I've been arriving at arriving to Taoism and Chinese medicine. Mm-hmm. It just feels like such a calling. It feels like I didn't have a say in the matter. I was talking about this with an acupuncturist friend, and we're both of us being like, we're acupuncturists. Like, what's that? And reflecting like, no one ever told us to do this in the way that they'll say, oh, maybe you should be a lawyer. Oh, maybe you should be a dentist. No, not in the worlds that I was raised in. No one's ever saying, hey, you should be an acupuncturist. Just not that common. But I guess I received some acupuncture with Dr. Ruth in Costa Rica. I have very challenging periods, and I still do. Acupuncture has helped me change my relationship to all that pain and discomfort. Still working on actually getting rid of the pain and discomfort. But
so how do you compare, for instance, because you're from your yoga perspective, and prana, the life force energy, and of course chi, which is that too. So in your acupuncture, how does that compare? Because we talk more about the meridians, of course, in acupuncture, whereas in India, it's the nadis. So I'd be interested to see your take on how the difference, if you could explain to us the difference between the meridians, for instance, and the nadis. So for our listeners, maybe explaining first what meridians are and then what nadis are, so they can understand for those who don't have it.
Sure. So the meridians, also known as the channels, the Jinglo, they are energetic pathways mapped across the body. They are correlated to the organs. However, so they're named after the organs in English. There's 12 primary, and then there's 8 extraordinary. The naming of them after the organ, though, is something that kind of like happened in the translation. They're not named after organs in Chinese.
Oh, I didn't know that. Interesting.
Yeah, but they do each pass through one organ. Mm-hmm. So it's a very important relationship. And mm-hmm. To mention the channels, it's important to also recognize that the organs, so every part of our body, like in this, I'm not going to say I think, in my opinion, I'm just going to speak the way, like this is all, of course, my opinion and what I've learned and what I hold to be true. But consciousness lives in every bit of our body. I don't believe that it lives in our brain or any one place. I think every cell holds some consciousness. Chi mm-hmm. is a very intelligent energy. And that's the thing, is to view chi as intelligence. And I also view prana this way. It's
mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It's not just the vehicle for information, it is mm-hmm. the information.
Yes.
And so that is what's traveling through the channels. You can't necessarily find them in a dissection on a corpse because they're subtle. However, with the osteopathic techniques that I study with acupuncturists, we're seeing that like, the vagus nerve or the mm-hmm. vena cava or the aorta, they actually have correlations to certain channels. So what I wanted to say, though, is that organs are among the highest consciousness parts of our bodies. So each one, like the heart houses the Shen, also known as like the spirits, the emperor. The liver houses the Hun, which is kind of like our time element, while the lungs house the Po, which is the corporeal, so the physical element. So when you work with the channels, you often are working distally or like far away from where like the pain is, or you're working with something that isn't pain. So like I'm getting more and more gravitated towards we're helping people through difficulties in their life, because I think that there's something about working with chi in a person's body that can open them up energetically to new options or new perspectives. And that can really help, I don't want to say raise, because that implies it's people that there is a lower, but really like alter and just like, raise, alter consciousness and help people navigate their lives with less strife and, more altruistically and just collectively better for everybody when everyone's in tune with their heart a little bit more and energy is flowing and there's less stagnation. So that's a huge thing in acupuncture with the meridians. Is there stagnation in it? Let's move it. How do you move it? Well, go to 4 years of school for it. And then as far as like nadis and marmas, I'm no authority on the topic. I studied a little bit of Ayurveda with my 200-hour in Chennai, India. And so what I know is that the nadis are the channels and that the marmas are points on them. And I know that before I ever went to massage school, I was giving a boyfriend at the time a head massage, and my hands I had no training, no nothing. My hands kept landing on certain places. And then come to find out they were all marma points. And now a huge part of my passion is craniosacral therapy. And so, the sutures along the skull bones. And so I don't know which came first, channels or nadis. Either way, I don't care. All I know is that there are many maps to the body. There's the muscles, there's the dermatomes, there's the anatomy trains, which is the myofascial planes. There's the channels and there's all the reflexology, whether it's the ear or the palm of the hand. And I just love all of them. I want to know all of them, which is ambitious. But I don't think any of them deny each other. And
no, and many of them actually, they connect. If you see throughout the world, throughout time, there's the connection between all these different ancient cultures. I have a friend of mine, she's from Mexico, and she's a jiu-jitsu practitioner. And I think she's an acupuncturist too. I'm not quite sure. Can't remember. But she collects everything she finds, these artifacts of, from the local indigenous, the Mayans, the Aztecs, whatever she can find, either in photos or in statues or whatever, of where they're holding their hands in different positions. And it's very interesting because she compares it then to in Jiu-Jitsu or in the Marma points as well, where people naturally, in our blueprint, in our consciousness, at a cellular level, we naturally know how to heal ourselves and move that energy. When a child hurts themselves, they put their hands immediately on it, or the mother kisses it and puts her hand it. These are natural movements that we all do. And through time and through disconnection, it has been lost to a degree. There's still the basics, what a mother does or a child does. But throughout time, you can find from the cultures, whether in India, Egypt, North America, Mexico, the Mayans, the Aztecs, all these things, there's this very strong common thread of healing. And I find that fascinating to make the connection with them too.
Absolutely. I think that there's different levels of intelligence, and we have such an emphasis on the mind in the West that it's dulled a lot of the subtler energies that not only has it dulled the energies, but our perception to them. And I think a huge part of the work I do and what I like to instill in my patients and my clients is an ability to hear it and respond to it a little bit more.
And I think that's exactly also what horses do as a gift for us too. They open that door, that window, even with people completely who would not even think about believing or going in this direction, all of a sudden just find their worlds turned upside down through this. The horses are sending this information at an energetic vibrational level to open up these doors, these windows for us to see or have a different understanding or be more open to it, at least to be able to heal ourselves and eventually also the world maybe. So as you said at the beginning of our podcast, we talked a lot about what's going on in the world today, COVID and the global warming and all the different things that are going on. And also the big movement of Black Lives Matters, which really just took off in the United States, but then also went really worldwide very quickly. And I know that you took a lot of interest in it and started to become very involved in it. what ways are what you do as an acupuncture, what ways are you trying to help and make a difference for people? And now in Black Lives Matter, I think we think of Black people, but there's a lot of white people that are involved in this too, and are affected by it because it hurts them to see this as well. So, but yet they're not. So how do you feel coming from your place as a multicultural background and wanting to make a stand and a point on this to make a better world? It's a lot I said right there, but
yeah, but it's all important. Well, first off, to say that I'm really involved, I think would detract from people that are doing much more than me. So it's all relative, right? I do feel heavily called to change how I show up in the world, thanks to Black Lives Matter. The prejudice and just the line of separation that we all navigate the world with, it's really important to bring our attention to, because it's not doing anyone any favors. These lines of division, it only sows more division. And I mean, this could go really deeply into conversations about, capitalism on a global scale and the commodification of meaning. Like it's so difficult seemingly to live a life where with more meaning than just consumption. You really have to go out of your way and be very intentional to live that life, which I think is interesting. I wish that could be the easier route. But there's a couple topics at play, but like basically I've committed myself to becoming as educated as I can about racism in the United States and the marginalization of Black people. First and foremost, so that I can weed out any racist tendencies in myself. And the truth of the matter is we all have it in ourselves. And racism, to be a racist, it was designed to be an insult. That's from Ibram Kendi in his book, How to Be an Anti-Racism, How to Be an Anti-Racist. Because if it's a taboo, then you don't want to talk about it. But the truth is we all have racist tendencies. So I'm trying to navigate the world in a way where I recognize that in myself and then work to rectify it. And so for a long time for several months, I was posting on Instagram and trying to be really active here and donate my money there and donate my time here. And then have stepped back a little bit and realized that this is lifelong work of transforming myself. And so it did speak to me though, on a personal and professional level. I've had the privilege, privilege and marginalization, it all comes to, so privilege and the varying like categories of being a minority, there's all these intersections. And so I am a woman of color, which makes me a minority, but I also don't have like the economic hardship that would compound that minority. So it's just interesting though to navigate being a minority, but also, being privileged in different ways. So things that have come up for me and that I've started educating myself on are the wellness industry and really learning that it is mostly geared towards like white people. I've learned so much about racial disparities in healthcare over the last several months. I volunteer every third Sunday at a BIPOC clinic. So BIPOC is Black and Indigenous people of color, that I, on Instagram, found a community of people, of really impressive people who organize a group of like healers. So we've got doulas and midwives, we've got massage therapists, we've got chiropractors, acupuncturists, and getting really organized and gathering at Balboa Park and inviting people, specifically minorities, to come in for free or donation-based work. And for me, as someone in the wellness industry, that feels like such a good use of my time. In addition to, or as opposed to, donating money here and sharing that Instagram post there. It's like, this is something super tangible that I'm giving my time and my passion to. And it feels good to give in that way and to be connecting with these communities, to recognize sometimes that we only operate within one stratus of culture or society. So to start, forming bonds with people in different socioeconomic situations or different cultural backgrounds. It's, like you were saying before, recognizing that we all are here for the same thing, right? Love, belonging, safety.
Yeah, absolutely. And you touched upon that point, which I think it's very much can be their practice of yoga, and the yamas and niyamas can really help us, where you touched upon that point that we all have some racism within us, even though we don't realize it. We've been brought up a certain way, and even if we've been brought up in a very open way, somehow we've been influenced by something. It can be TV, it can be books, it can be movies, it can be your family, it can be your social network in school or different things. And without knowing it, you can think you're the most non-racist person in the world, but something has kind of leaked onto you and you automatically respond in a certain way. And people don't realize it. And I have seen it myself. I have to practice honesty. And I've seen it in other people I know that would do anything to help other people of any race whatsoever. But we've been, somehow it's ingrained back in our genetics. I don't know, I don't know it, because as humans, for where I come and what I feel is, I do believe in karma, and I also do believe in that we come back and reincarnation. So I could have been this person or that person, that from this country or that country, in many different ways. So one wonders why it's a stigma that's related to our actual life, not coming from past lives. So that's an interesting thing too. It's something I believe very much in our lives we're living right now. That sounds a bit confusing, but to come back to yoga can help us by practicing that satya, truthfulness, really digging deep and finding out, what did I just say there? What did I think? Where did that come from? Why did I act that way? Maybe it's not correct. Or even words we use and say without thought. Knowing that words and thoughts have energy and vibrations and influence, can hurt other people or can change the energy that is around us and affect people. So it's really important to do that introspection, that looking within ourselves. Yes, you agree Black Lives Matter, but how much are you acting upon it? How much are you actually realizing what it means? And me, being, white woman here, as many friends as I have here and living in Costa Rica in the Caribbean, it's still something I can't understand because I'm not. And it breaks my heart to see people suffer like that in ways. But I can't say that I can understand it because I can't. Because I'm not.
Sure, right? There's this phrase going around, I'll never understand. I know I'll never understand, but I'm listening.
Yes, that's beautiful.
I think that's a huge one right now. And so much of what's happening, I think, is just this diverting of resources, attention being a resource, right? Like to Black communities. So whether it's supporting Black business or following more Black people on Instagram, just diversifying your feed, diversifying the way you consume things. And I love that you brought the yamas and the niyamas and yoga into this whole topic, because yoga gets down to capital T truth, right? And I won't say too much about it, but racism, it's a cultural construct that was designed to oppress people for economic gain. And so that is a narrative that has been perpetuated still. It's still being perpetuated. And to be reflective and to be mindful and to use yoga as a tool for accessing something that is a bigger truth than that cultural manipulation, it's healing. Yoga
and cultivating compassion.
100%. Yeah.
Cultivating compassion. Yeah, it is a very important subject, and subject, that's not a correct word. It's a very important thing that's happening in the world today, along with everything else. I see it as a big shift in energies and changing I don't believe it's going to be anywhere near an overnight or over year fix. It's going to take so much time still, but at least it's in the right direction.
We're having reckonings as a species in more ways than one. I've heard several people say it this way about COVID, for example, that we're being sent to our rooms to think about what we've done. That was lockdown, and it's like, I mean, Gaia, Pachamama, Mother Nature, she is a force to be reckoned with, and she said, go to your rooms, and we had no choice. And then for that energetic to, like, whether it was always going to come in on the same wave as BLM, or if it helped the wave of BLM form, there's just all these things where humankind is saying, wait, what have we been doing?
What have we been doing?
Right? We're having to reflect and think to ourselves, like, for so many reasons, for loving kindness, for the, to perpetuate the very existence of our species, if we have any hopes of survival, for the sake of the other animals that live on this planet, for the sake of the economy, for so many things, it's like we need some paradigm shifts, and paradigm shifts don't happen overnight. And the really interesting thing, in my opinion, is that paradigm shifts won't happen politically or culturally or in a revolution. They're going to happen when consciousness changes.
Absolutely.
And I think going to our room and thinking about what we've done is an opportunity. I think Gaia thought to herself, what more can I do?
Yeah, lock them up.
Lock them up and send them inward. Less external stimulation, meaning what? Go inward.
Go inward. Yes, pratyahara, and also swadhyaya, self-study, just to take that time to study yourself and your actions and the difference you can make, because no matter how hard our situations, we can all make a difference. Whether it's just the way we look at people, the way we smile, the way we have a supporting word or thought, even if we have no money, there are many different ways that we can all make a change. And the change begins with ourselves, and that practice of self-study, which yoga gives us so many tools to understand ourselves better, and then therefore we can understand the world and be better people to help the world and make that change to elevate our consciousness for everyone.
Yeah, it makes me think of this Dalai Lama quote about the power of one. He's like, if you've ever doubted the power of one, think about one mosquito in your bedroom all night, right? That mosquito is going to rock your world all night. That sounded weird, but
it's true though. It's true.
Yeah, things are going to be different. I think it can be daunting sometimes, the power of one, because we're up against so many forces. And I live a very spiritual life, and I love the language of spirituality. But I always try to toe the line where I can speak two different languages, one that of spirituality and one where we can speak to people who have an aversion to those words, right? So
yeah, absolutely. Those are the people that need the help even more. And I find that very, very important and very interesting, is planting these seeds in people's, but you have to learn to speak their language. And I think it was Natalie when we were the other day, I think that was on the lectures we were doing with your mom on the 10 wisdom goddesses. She was saying when she was giving classes to her yoga students, a lot of people coming in with a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, whether emotionally and mentally through what's going on, but also physically because, they can't bend, they can't move, it hurts their knees, their joints and everything. But she can't talk to them in a sort of like, she has to learn she didn't know how to talk to them in their words to connect with them. And it's something I think it's very important as yogis, as healers, etc., to learn to understand that language that they can understand and captivate. Because if we speak to us in our spiritual terms or in yogic terms and everything else, either they're going to roll their eyes and walk away, or they're going to miss the point or be afraid even. But if you start slowly speaking their language with them and helping them understand, look, if you just do this and that and turn your head that way and do that, all of a sudden the vibration within them starts to change without them knowing it. And they're just a bit more open to listen and say, what did you say? What's that about? You can see sometimes the changes, and sometimes it can take a day and sometimes a year or 10 years. Everyone needs to go on their own path in the end, right? But I think it's important that we open our hearts to find ways to reach out to people who maybe don't even know they need help.
I think I agree with all that so wholeheartedly. And really, it comes down to meeting someone where they're at, A, and B, always recognizing that everyone's doing their best. I think when you can switch your mindset to that, to realizing this person is doing literally their best, then you have nothing but love and compassion for them, and and an openness to their methods, And so when it comes to yoga and healing and Sanskrit and all these things, you can't expect everyone to speak your language. That is another divisive method, that's just one more division. So seeking more common ground and I think also always looking to learn from the person you're with, even if you're in the supposed role of teacher or practitioner or whatever it is, knowing that that person in equal parts has just as much to teach you.
Exactly. So true. Well, with this, Kiran, I'd like to, unless you have anything else you'd like to add, I have one last question, or actually something I'd like to ask you.
Yeah, sure. Let's go for the last question. I've enjoyed this so much.
Well, we've been talking. Is there anything else you would like to talk about or share with us?
Nothing that's coming up. No.
Okay. If something does, just go ahead with it. I think it's something very interesting because we touched a point about people right now, especially in this world, and a lot of people thinking, well, I would like to help, but I have no idea how to help. I'm not a yogi, I'm not a healer, I'm not a teacher, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse, I'm not a firefighter, I'm not this, I'm not that. And it can seem so overwhelming, and then they start feeling guilty and bad and creating that negative energy within them, and there's just no point in that. Is there something that you would like to advise people that could make them feel better about themselves and come to terms with ways they could help?
Sure. Yeah. It's a really great question, and something great to explore. It makes me think of something that in my personal lexicon, have coined presence practices. And I think that, so one of my teachers in acupuncture school kind of taught me of this concept. There's the lumpers, and then there's like the purists. And so the purists, they choose one school and they go deep into that one, and that's their everything, and it's beautiful and it works for them. But then there's the lumpers, and they have a very eclectic approach. They take something from that school of thought, something from that philosophy. So I'm a lumper.
I'm a lumper too.
Right? Yeah. I love the eclectic approach because there's so much from different traditions.
Yeah.
But so I'm not going to say to anyone, you need to meditate, you need to eat a raw diet, and you need to read the sutras every night or whatever it is, because we're such beautifully unique individuals. But what I advise, for example, the people that I work with, or the advice that I give to my friends and what I tell myself is to find what brings you to the present moment, whatever it is. As a child, it was horseback riding for me. Now it's yoga or climbing or surfing or my work, acupuncture and craniosacral, or even just chatting with a friend. Find your presence practice and cultivate it. Do more of it. And then find the people that are doing it and collaborate with them and form community with them. And then together, when you're operating from a place of presence and you're doing that in community, I believe that your heart will be in the right place because you're in the present moment. And then from there, mobilize, find a cause and work towards it. It's not super hard to get behind a cause. What can be hard though is the bravery to keep at it every day, or finding the company, the companionship to keep going at it every day. But just identify your presence tool, identify your cause, and identify your communities, and then collaborate. And also know that you don't have to figure out every aspect of the plan. You might be the person who brings the chips and salsa every time. And thank God, because that fuels that other idea person's brain. And then they say an idea, and then you have an idea about that. So I'm all about collaboration.
Yes. Thank you. That was really what I thought very interesting and very good advice. And that people should know not everyone is the people that have the creative ideas they don't have the energy to manifest and make it happen. You need that engine. The people that create the engine, it's okay. They get the idea, now I run with it. I'm going to make it happen. I'm the organizer. Then you've got the other one that needs to feed them or bring the food or bring the coffee or bring the water. The other one that goes to the errands. There's always so many different ways. And not one is a lesser position. All is needed because it makes the all come together, the union of it all. All the spikes of the wheels are needed, otherwise the wheel's not going to turn. So whatever way people can help in their communities or even in their family units, it doesn't have to be, I think whatever small thing it is, it's still important. It's always important.
Absolutely. And I mean, if I can just, I'm always struggling between like plugging my work, plugging what it is I do versus knowing that like it's for the collective. It's an offering. I'm here of service. So I think I would just like to mention that, regardless of where you are in the world, we live in a very Zoom oriented world now anyway. And I've realized that I am someone who like loves to make things happen. And so towards that end, I've taken the things that I'm passionate about and I've developed a couple of workshops. And so you took the 5 element one, where we use the 5 elements of Taoism. So fire, earth, metal, water, wood, to get in closer touch with ourselves. You can use these archetypal tools to discover more about yourself, and then knowing that much about yourself, apply it towards a goal. So that's one workshop. And then, as I mentioned, this Tantric 10 Goddesses of Wisdom workshop that I'm developing, where you can channel and harness those qualities of nature that the goddesses represent towards making things happen or shifting things. And so if anyone's ever struggling to find exactly what their presence tool is or how they can collaborate or who their people are, like these are tools that have been passed down through the generations that we can cultivate, that we can get to know ourselves better with. So those are some offerings I have that I wanted to mention. Absolutely.
And for our listeners, at the end of the podcast, we'll have Kiran's link. So if you're interested in joining her workshops and finding extra tools that you can use in your life for yourself or for others, I definitely recommend checking up on her. And we'll put her Instagram as well, so you can follow if you're interested in what Kiran's doing. She's in San Diego, and if you're in that area, you can always connect with her as well. So thank you so much, Kiran, for being with us today. It was a very interesting conversation, and I wish our listeners a beautiful ending of today. And my little word of wisdom, let's say, what would I have for today, is trust yourself. I think the most important, whatever your belief system is, whatever it is, what's important for you, that is important. So if that's giving you joy and a sense of presence and a value in your life, and that's your way to do it, trust in that. As long as it's not harmful to you or to anyone else, that will be your path, and that's your light to guide you, whatever it is. And it might be from going to church or having your yoga practice or belonging to a dance group or a choir group or a singing group, or, dancing on the streets. All different things are all out there. So trust what brings you that light and that joy, and that will guide you. That will give you the codes of how to live as well, because it's community. Staying on your own has its qualities, and you can find that sense of self-direction, but also be involved. We're humans, so we're not meant to be alone. We're sort of, there's animals that are solitary animals, pack animals, herd animals, and we are animals that live in groups. So it's important to connect with your peers, with others out there. So find a spot that resonates with you and try it. If it doesn't work, try something else. But stay activated.
Stay activated. Oh, Terry, it's been such a pleasure. I really love connecting with you. Oh, garbage truck. And I'm very inspired by you. You're a heart-driven woman, and it's really lovely to witness. And I'm really glad to be connected with you so closely. So thank you so much for having me.
And thank you for being here. Have a beautiful day, Adi.
You too.
Namaskar.